Welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, a podcast and radio show which features leaders from all walks of life in conversations about courageous connectedness. How do we stay connected to our best selves, especially when we are challenged? What becomes possible when we truly stay committed to our own and others' greatness, also when we don't feel it? Join host Hylke Faber, transformational coach, facilitator, and award-winning author of Taming Your Crocodiles, and his guests as they explore leadership greatness in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering.
Well, welcome to Rooted and Unwavering, broadcasting live today. And we are here to help connect leaders connect more deeply to their innate potential. I'm your host, Hylke Faber, and I'm here today with Scott Richert, currently and for a while now, Chief Information Officer at Mercy, the hospital system. Scott, how are you today?
I'm doing very well. Thanks, Hylke. It's a pleasure to be on here.
And it's an honor for me to sit with you, Scott. Scott and I met, maybe about half a year ago now, and he said a few things then that made a very deep impact on me, having to do with service. So I'll tell a little bit more about Scott in a moment. And before we do that, I'd like to say a bit more about this podcast series of Rooted and Unwavering. So we're doing Rooted and Unwavering because we like to help people connect more deeply to themselves, each other, and their purpose. And you could say connect more deeply to the wisdom, the potential that is within each of us, that especially when we get challenged or stressed, seems like miles away from us. So how do we connect to our best selves? How do we show up kinder, gentler, fiercer, more truthful, especially when the chips are down, when we may get negative feedback, or maybe we were in the beginning of a very high aspiration and we're wondering, how am I going to do this? That's what we're going to explore. So I'm here today with Scott Richert, and Scott has inspired me through his service orientation. He is a mission-focused Chief Information Officer and digital transformation leader that has a very long and distinguished career and leading career-enabling bold achievements that are transforming healthcare. He's been working in healthcare for 30 years, and he has found success in building strategic thinking teams that continue to bring collaborative solutions to healthcare's most significant challenges. Some of his most impactful accomplishments include electronic medical record implementations, turning data into predictive data insights, and enabling consumer experience transformation that simplify complex health journeys. And he has a very deep commitment to healthcare and to service, which is also very resonant with the company or the organization that he's part of, Mercy, which is all about service and healthcare. What struck me about Scott in the time that I've gotten to know him is quiet, humility, and a great sense of clarity. This is what my life is about. And I'm thinking, if all 8 billion of us could be so clear as Scott is about what we're really about, with a lot of humility and compassion for ourselves and others, wow, what a world we could be in. So Scott, welcome. So glad that you're here today.
Wow, thank you, Hylke. That's very, 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 very nice introduction. And I will say I don't have it all figured out by any means. I think we're all on the journey of connecting the meaningfulness and the core purposes of why we're here to how we spend our time every day and how we interact with others and how we inspire others. So I'm surrounded by people that have that same approach. I'm lucky to work for an organization that has that orientation, and so I don't feel as a standout here, but I feel like I'm a product of the nurturing and cultivating that's happened in my life to bring me to this point. So very happy to be on the show.
Very glad that you're here. So tell us, Scott, what have you learned in your life about connectedness in life and leadership? What have you learned? What have you been learning?
I have to say, first of all, just the title of this broadcast, Rooted and Unwavering, was enough to get me hooked to want to participate in it, because it very, very much resonates with how I see the difference in living our lives kind of transactionally versus living it from a purpose perspective, and finding and driving and inspiring purpose in all the things that we put our hand to in this life. So to me, it makes all the difference, in a meaningful career versus a transactional punch the clock and experience. It makes such a difference in terms of how we can build teams that can accomplish things when we're rallying around common purposes, and we all have great diversity in our backgrounds and approach, but that connectedness to why we're here and the constituency of people and communities that we help just is really transformative. From my perspective, in whatever career anyone's in, there's going to be a meaning and a purpose for that. And if you can always stay connected to that in your thinking, that drives better decisions. It helps you be more thoughtful, and it helps you to inspire others to grasp onto that meaning and that purpose as well. And then, before long, you find yourself surrounded by people that will go to extreme measures to get work done, to fulfill their commitments to the organization, to innovate on new things, and to bring new ideas. So it's a really powerful dimension that, from my perspective, if you go through your career without kind of latching onto that, you're really leaving a lot on the table. You're not getting the benefit, not bringing the benefit to the world, and you're not enjoying the meaningfulness that you can get to yourself. So it's very, very important to me.
I hear that connection to purpose, the why we're doing this, and not being sidewayed by the transactional momentum of a lot what might be going on, or even going like punching the clock, as you said.
Yeah.
Tell us about your life, Scott, because you're talking about this, as if it's almost second nature for you. And I can imagine many people listening thinking, yeah, we've heard about this before. Like, we want to be purposeful, have a purposeful life, but how does one connect to their purpose? How does one find their purpose? So tell us about how you have found and have been finding and maybe continue to find your purpose.
Okay, well, I'll start with a little bit of my backstory, and it's not very dramatic, but it's very fulfilling. And I've had the privilege of really starting with a great upbringing. I had a very stable and nurturing home life as a child, which is a luxury, and I definitely count that as a blessing. And as I shared with you before, my Christian faith really shaped my view and formed me, and help me see what matters in life, and kind of what pursuits are hollow versus those that are maybe counterfeit or more selfish. And so, just that my Christian experience really shaped my worldview, and I live my life that way. So it's hard to tell my story without mentioning that and talking about that. I'm still learning how to bring that to life, and how to live that life. But as I grew up in that environment, I had that powerful experience as a young person, really connecting with my faith and finding the depths of Christianity. And then as I grew up and observed mentors and role models in my life, I really used that as inspiration and use that as guidance for me. So I'm a person that I've done a lot of things for a long time. There's an author I like is Eugene Peterson. He has a book called A Long Obedience in the Same Direction, and even that title resonates with me a lot. So, I met my wife in grade school. I met her in 5th grade, and we didn't get married till we were in our 20s. But like I said, I've been at Mercy for over 30 years, and that my path took me. When I was a kid, my father also had a career at Mercy. He worked here 22 years before he retired. And he took a job in healthcare at the Mercy organization when I was 8 years old. And I met his boss at that point, Sister Rock, which is a big part of my story, when I was that age, and then would never considered eventually I'd be working for Sister Rock as well in the future. But so anyway,
what was the impression? Sorry to interrupt you for a second. What was the impression that Sister Rock left on you when you were 8, 9, 10 years old? What did you learn from her?
Well, as a child, I wasn't sure about it. It was my dad had worked for a factory, and he was an accounting manager, and he got laid off, and he took all kinds of odd jobs to make ends meet, and then he got hired as Sister Rock, and the team at Mercy hired him when Mercy was first looking at automating things with computer technology. So I remember thinking, why does Dad's office kind of feel a little bit like a church? and why are there sisters walking around here? So it was a little odd for me at first, but I could tell even as a child that this wasn't a regular organization. It was an organization that had vision and purpose, and I could see that she was a powerful figure that had vision, and where she wanted to go was completely different from where the organization was at that point. So she really was our modern, even though Mercy as an organization has been in existence since 1827, we consider her our modern day foundress because she really shaped what we've turned into at this point. So right off the bat, saw her as a powerful figure, but also an empathetic figure. And all throughout her life, as I worked with her more and more, she would, to my joy, she would frequently refer back to the early days of working with my dad and tell me stories about the ideas that they had and the reasons they did things and the challenges they had. And so that always, so she's been this constant throughout my career, this kind of constant figure in my life, that I also feel an accountability to her and to those that came before her to think about this mission as a multi-generational effort. And I've got my turn at the wheel right now. And like I mentioned to you before, one of the things I think about when I make decisions here is, what would Sister Rock think about this? What would she do? Is this aligned to the purposes of our organization, and that's aligned to who we are and aligned to who we want to be to our communities? So that was she's definitely a powerful person in my life, and she passed away a little over a year ago, but definitely still think about her and her inspiration all the time.
I'm so struck by your saying this. What would Sister Rock do? And also talking about making decisions as part of a lineage. Like, I am part of this ongoing stream, and I'm going to steward it well. And so yes. My question is, since that's so unusual, like most managers today are focused on the short term and maybe on a good day on the longer term. Mm-hmm. And then you're adding to this, I am part of like carrying on, honoring the previous generations and setting the stage for future generations, which is a whole other view, you could say, that's beyond short term and long term. It's multi-generational. That's a very different lens.
Absolutely.
When did you start really embodying and leading from that multi-generational connected lens? And what was happening beforehand when you were maybe not quite there yet? Because I can imagine that as a 20-odd-year-old, you might not have gotten that in your bones yet. Or maybe you did. I don't know.
No, I didn't. And actually, when I came to Mercy, I was a little bit career-wise and purpose-wise even a bit lost. I suffered from the what I've heard described as the passion hypothesis. I felt like I didn't have a big life passion. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to be and what I was supposed to do. And that hung me up for a while. And I had friends that were moving out and doing very purposeful things. I had a friend who, was a missionary. I had another friend who's a musician and went out and became very successful as a musician. And, I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself. And so I through prayer and just kind of trusting God one step at a time, I started to transfer that ambition to find my passion to let me find my purpose where I'm at right now and think about what can I do to impact the sphere I'm in right now, and how can I grow myself? How can I make the environment that I'm in better? And then that kind of got my wheels of my car rolling a little bit. And then as I would do that, the next opportunity would come along, and eventually I found myself, growing in ability for what I was doing as a technologist and as a leader, but also growing in impact and starting to strengthen my purpose muscle a little bit and saying, okay, I can see what this organization is trying to do. I remember specifically being in a meeting one day as I was kind of transitioning from a technical role into more of a leadership role, and hearing about our organization deciding about, we had a community where we had a hospital in, and the hospital was, persistently losing money. And it was very difficult, very big drain on the organization. And, most organizations, it would be, let's exit. How do we get out of there? But I remember our Sister Rock and our other lay leaders even saying, we are called to this community. We're essential to this community. We're not going to give up on them. At some point, if there is a transition where we move the healthcare to another organization, that's fine, but we can't abandon this community. So I remember feeling like, wow, and they referred to, we've been at this since 1820s, and our predecessors in leadership would not do this. So that's when it first struck me as, okay, this is not a typical organization, and that, they're willing to make those kind of decisions, not about money. I mean, we have to have margin to continue to do our mission, obviously. But I remember that experience being the first time it lit up at me, and I thought, yeah, this is an organization I could put my life behind, and I like the way we, the view of ourselves as we're here for a purpose. We have a obligation to fulfill what was started decades ago, and we have an obligation to pass this off to the next generation in a way that it's going to continue to be impactful on the world. And that same, multiple episodes, we had years later, we had a tornado that destroyed a hospital in the Joplin, Missouri community. And the same attitude, our CEO at that point just dug right in, and it's like, it's totally destroyed. And it's like, we just actually acquired it from another organization. So my thought is, wow, are we out of this community now? And he's like, absolutely not. We made a commitment to the community. We're going to rebuild. We're going to take care of the coworkers that were impacted by this. And so I've had several days like that. I've just been very proud to be part of an organization with that kind of purpose driven and essentiality to the communities that we serve.
And I'm sensing with you, Scott, also with the intentional openness to be able to recognize that. Part of what you just said earlier on was, I saw my friends becoming missionaries or musicians,
right.
And I was wondering, what about me, right? And I just want us to pause for a second at that, because at that junction, so you could so easily go for, let me quickly get to something that also gets to some impact success, right? Using the brain. And what I heard you say is like, no. I went to God. I went to prayer. For those of us that have maybe a different relationship with God or higher power, translating this as, I chose to stay in the question, how can I be of service? What is asked for me? And what I hear from you is that your organization is having a very similar orientation. What is called forth from us? So when we are clear about that, we're going to make different kinds of decisions than short-term profit maximization or taking the path of least resistance, like you didn't do in that community where things weren't profitable, or in Missouri when there was this disaster. You found obedience to the long way, paraphrasing that title of that book, which sounds lovely. So, Scott, tell us a bit about your personal journey, because so much of your journey seems to be formed by your environment, by Mercy, Tell us about maybe some harder choices that you made in your life, that you've made in your life,
Yeah,
that
well,
in retrospect, made all the difference, whether you actually went the road of purpose or the road of short-term transactionalism.
yeah, I'll go back to again this early part in my career, in my mid 20s, where I was still struggling with purpose and passion. Am I on the right path? And prior to coming to Mercy, I worked for a small software organization that was fulfilling. It had because it was small, I had a broad range of responsibility, and it was fun. I got to make product and sell it and see the customers enjoy it and go back and refine it and make it better. So I kind of developed the kind of the craftsman part of my career pillar, and that role, and then being unaware of the importance of purpose, and a friend came along and said, "Hey, I work for a utility company. We're hiring people." And basically, there was a 40% salary increase that I could take. And so, my initial thought was, hey, why not? I'm young and I'm starting a family, 40% salary increase. I can do what I do somewhere else. And no consideration of anything other than money. And so I remember getting to that spot, and boy, it was just within a week or two, I just realized I had made a big mistake, and that I didn't have the craftsman ability that I had at the previous place. So I didn't feel like I was contributing as much, and I realized, I don't feel connected to the purpose of all the people that work around me. I'm not sure, other than getting a paycheck, I'm not sure what we're doing. So that was probably the low point in my 20s of really feeling aimless and really, really making decisions before I learned about myself. So coming out of that, I learned that I need to do something that has a purpose around it. I need to be able to connect with it. I need to be able to be proud of what I'm doing, and I need to I need these elements that I've gained already. I want to be good at something. I want to be a craftsman, and I want to have meaningfulness. And then I learned that I need a little bit of autonomy, where I can elbow room, where I can have vision and bring it to execution, which I think is the seed of leadership desire in me at that point as well. And so that's why my next move was to Mercy, because I thought at the very least, this working for healthcare, I can get behind that. That seems important work, and I still wasn't fully engaged with it, but honestly, when I was working for the utility company and feeling that way, I was very tempted to crawl back to my old boss at the small company and say, "Can I just have my job back?" And I remember that would have been very much of a relief for me to do that. And I just remember feeling that there was a reason that I needed to move forward out of that. I moved forward in the wrong direction, but I don't feel that God wants me to move backwards. So even though it could have been an easy escape to do that, and I wanted to do that, I felt in my gut, like that's, I'm going through all this struggle and turmoil now. I need to keep going forward rather than going backwards. And to me, that was really the grace of God that kept me from doing that, because I wouldn't have had the career that I have now, and I wouldn't have found the meaningfulness and the purposefulness that I found. So, so from then on, that kind of planted that. Then I knew more about myself, who I was, what I needed in my career to feel what I was doing was meaningful, to feel that I was growing, and to feel that I was impacting other people. And eventually that led to, thinking about myself as a leader, because I didn't originally think of myself as a leader at first. I just wanted to do something important, be good at it, and be rewarded for it.
I'm so struck by how you're talking about that the experience of the utility company actually was very helpful for you, even if it was a hard experience, and how that experience gave you basically insight of like, this is not what I want. And I think that's such a powerful thing to reflect on, because I think in our lives we may have this idea like, I want to have only the perfect experiences. Well, there's no grace in that, and there's no adventure in that. There's no discovery in that. Just we need to, learn the ropes, and we continue to learn the ropes. And sometimes we bark up a wrong rope, or a rope that doesn't fit us,
Yeah,
and we actually find out, like, oh, I didn't like that. I did not want that. So you learned that just money and maybe some influence wasn't cutting it for you.
right.
What a powerful learning. And you also learned that you couldn't go backward. What a powerful learning. Right. And that's almost, you can read that in a place, but I think a person has to experience that to really make it their own and feel it in their bones. And then it becomes power.
It does. You're right. That's so important. I think, I've raised 4 children who now transitioning into adults, and I can see some of the same struggles in them of, what do I do now? And what's my purpose? And so for me, it's been a blessing to be able to help tell my story. Now, everybody's different. Nobody's story is just like mine, but I see that a lot in young people today that I feel like this is a helpful message for them, because you don't have to have all that pressure on yourself to have this whole passion figured out and have your whole life figured out. You just have to find the next step and put your hand to something and see if God blesses it, and see if it turns on your circuitry for purpose. And if it doesn't, then keep moving. If it does, then go harder.
That it turns on your circuitry for purpose. Scott, how do you experience when your circuitry for purpose gets turned on? How do you experience that?
So for me, it activates the basic things like the willingness to work hard, but it also, for me, it turns on my strategic synapses in my thinking. So when we know when we see a purpose, and then you start to get a vision of what could we do better, differently. And for me, that's led me into opportunities where I'll propose, hey, here's a way we can do this, or here's a thing that I think we can accomplish. Look at what we have accomplished. Here's what we can do next. If you know the destination that the organization's purpose drives, that kind of frees you to think on a broad horizon of areas where you can bring impact to that purpose. So to me, I feel like I'm in my I'm in the zone when I'm driven by purpose, and I think that this aligns to what the organization needs. It aligns to who the organization is. Sister Rock would like this idea. So to me, it just connects even the smallest task every day to why we're here, and it makes the day go by faster because you're excited to get things accomplished, and it makes you somebody like me that wasn't a natural. I didn't see myself as a natural leader. Being able to share that attitude and that vision, ultimately started allowing me to rally people of the same mindset and try to evangelize that and build that connectedness to purpose. And so it just activates everything. It activates your own drive, but it also activates how you impact the people around you, and it has an exponential effect on moving an organization forward. So. That's how
in our leadership work, we often talk about 3 dimensions of success and energy: the I, the we, and the it. The self, the relationships, the we, and the it, the task and the purpose. And as I hear you talk about when your purpose circuitry is turned on, all 3 levels start to light up. Yeah. Your I starts to light up. Your passion goes up, and you want to go to work, and you want to work hard. You have more openness to work creatively, compassionately, empathetically with a wide range of people on the we, and on the it, on the purpose and the task and achieving things, because you're connected to this vision. Any task can be a one step forward towards it. So it turns on your strategic thinking about how do we move towards it. It's like the difference between walking up a mountain where you can see where you're going versus walking into any random street, and it doesn't really matter whether you get to the end of that street or not. It's very different feeling. We're going to take a break in a moment. After the break, Scott, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about What happens on days, Scott, when you're not feeling it? If those days exist, right? If those days exist,
They do.
what happens when you're not feeling it? And how do you then turn back toward purpose, towards that energy? How do you do that? We're going to take a break now. See you after the break. We're talking with Scott Richert, Chief Information Officer currently of the Mercy Hospital System. And you'll be listening to Rooted and Unwavering, episode 45. See you after the break.
You are listening to Rooted and Unwavering, presented by Growth Leaders Network, the leadership, team, and culture development company. If you would like to learn more about working on connectedness for yourself, your team, or organization, please contact Growth Leaders Network on LinkedIn. And now, back to the show.
Welcome back to Rooted and Unwavering, episode 45. We're speaking with Scott Richert, Chief Information Officer of Mercy Hospital Systems. I'm your host, Hylke Faber, and we're talking with Scott about purpose. And one of the things that really hit me was you just know when your purpose circuitry is turned on and you open yourself towards that. And I also heard it as almost like grace. Like you turn toward it, but you can't quite make it happen, and then it happens. Like it's almost like a gift that you receive in the exchange of being open. So tell us about days that you're not feeling it, Scott. Maybe an experience you've had, and how do you work with that?
Yeah, that's a very important question, because I mean, there definitely are days when where I don't feel like I'm at the top of the mountain, purpose wise. And I think I've been doing this a lot of years, and my stories are from healthcare, but I think they relate to any career that you think you feel has meaning. So there's definitely a percentage of task and drudgery that we all have in our day-to-day lives and our work that, sometimes it's a series of days that are just task oriented, and then you have periods of time where there's quantum leaps and you accomplish something, or you have a new idea comes to light, or you're able to do something important for your organization. So I think it's important to realize that the daily grind is part of it, and you can't live a life without the daily grind, and that's just part of the journey. But what is always the infusion of fuel into all that is going back to why we're here. So in healthcare, technology, what's been real effective for me is, and for my whole organization is, like, for instance, we consider every coworker, whether you're in technology or you're doing something else, whether you're a nurse or a lab technician, that every coworker we've recently started calling caregivers. And so, no matter what you're doing, you are in the stack of things that we do to provide care to patients. And when I need a refresh, I want to get with the caregivers. Some of the most rewarding days I've had is when I've been able to, shadow a nurse on the floor, or talk to the physicians on my team that tell me about, here's why physicians' lives are more difficult now that in some cases, now we bought technology to them, we made some more things difficult. And so, the regular task of solving problems and, making a budget and dealing with unhappy customers occasionally, that all rolls up into fulfillment when it's, okay, I know the problems. I've considered myself an important player in whether how well patients are taken care of, how well we serve our communities. And so these tasks all add up to delivering to that. So in short, the bottom line, when you have those days when you don't feel like you're working for purpose, you really have to remind yourself about how is this all adding up. I mean, even our people that work in technology infrastructure and taking care of the data centers and so forth, it's like you are making sure that important decision-making systems are available to our caregivers. There's people in the emergency room right now. There's people on the surgery table right now. And because you're doing your job well, that needed information, that needed assistance for the caregivers is at their fingertips. And and that should drive you to consider yourself a caregiver. It should drive you to hate downtime. So be creative and figure out ways to keep our systems from going down. It should drive you to come up with ways to make that caregiver, the frontline caregiver's life less clerical. So if they're having to do a lot of things in a computer, how can we make things easier for them? How can we automate more things for them? So there's always, even on the bad days, there's always opportunities to connect the most mundane task to, the big picture of why we're doing what we're doing. So to me, I definitely have days where I'm cranky. I don't feel like I'm improving the world for healthcare, improving my communities, but on the whole, every day is a step forward in that direction.
I'm struck by this brand of saying everybody is a caregiver, which means also you, Scott. Everybody's a caregiver. And that by itself turns on your purpose circuitry. And I noticed the difference between that orientation and I want to feel good about this task for me,
Sure.
which just not saying just doing a budget or taking care of a glitch or whatever it might be, taking care of a complaint may not feel like that. If I'm self-centered, if I'm having the delusion of the small me, and what you're saying is no, step out of, at least the way I'm hearing this, step out of your small sense of me, which by definition is not going to be satisfying, and open yourself up to the broader perspective you're part of, the person that's right now on the surgery table in the ICU, or if you're working in a company, whatever you are working towards with your customer that you really want to see happen, like what you really want to see happen, right?
Absolutely.
And I think in our current world, we may get deluded because part of what we've been taught that we want to see happen is that they buy more stuff or more service. And that is maybe a little satisfying because it provides the longevity of the organization. Fine, right? But in the end, it's not that satisfying. It goes beyond something like just money, what I'm hearing from you. It goes to what I really want to help these people with, whatever that is. So absolutely. Go ahead, Scott. Go ahead.
Yeah, and that's. I mean, like I said, it should be easy in healthcare to attach to that. So I feel like I'm privileged because it's easier for me to connect my teams to the purposes, and for me thinking, my family members, my kids or my parents, will be an emergency department patient someday, or they'll be an inpatient in the hospital. They'll be in the OR suite getting surgery, or their physician will be wanting a quick turnaround on their radiology study. So all the things we're doing, we're able to connect it to. I want this to be this organization to be ready to fulfill its call for the community. My family's going to feel it. My community's going to feel it. And one of the things, besides referring to ourselves as caregivers, I also say, for my team, when you meet someone new, you're at a dinner party or something, you introduce yourself, and they ask what business you're in, you should always say healthcare. You went to school for technology, you got all these certifications for technology, but your purpose is healthcare, and that's how you should describe yourself. So I think that's and part of reinforcing that in our organization, some of my favorite things to do is to bring caregivers into our team meetings to say, this is how you've made life easier for us. This is the impact you're having on patients, and particularly when you tell individual patient stories that are just wonderful to hear, success stories that were enabled by some of the things that we helped with. So that really motivates people. It really motivates me. And so, what you're well aware of, storytelling and connecting to purpose just really, really fuels our tank.
Gives me hope for humanity as you speak this way, thinking that tells us that something in us really resonates with helping others. Like deep down, I think we all like to help others. Deep down, it's just that we sometimes get a little confused in our focus because of this thing, this that, and the other. So, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, just going back to we talked about being transactional. I think that's, particularly in today's world and technology, where so many of us, a lot of people work remotely where that didn't work before. And so many people are not working. My team, most of them are a fair percentage of them don't work in the hospital care settings. They're working remotely or they're working in office buildings. So, it's very, all of my team that are leaders, is very important for us to keep drawing people out of that transactional mindset. You're not just closing incidents. You're not just upgrading servers. Your work is resulting in care being better. It's resulting in things that is going to help our communities and our families. So it really comes back to helping all the individual coworkers to pull themselves out of that transactional mindset.
And you've given us some examples of how you do that by, for example, sharing or being exposed to frontline caregivers or patient stories. How do you help your colleagues, people that are in your team, on a bad day or when there's a lot of stress or something like that, to rise above it or to reconnect? How do you do that?
Yeah, that is one of the challenges in leadership, and there are days where we think, oh, the organization wants us to do something that this is going to be hard, or we're not sure this is going to work right because maybe we have information that the organization needs to know. So there's always kind of situations where we're asked to do something that we either think this is going to be more difficult than what the organization is aware of, or it might not yield the results that the organization is aware of. Right. And so we very infrequently work on something that's a snap. We know it's going to be perfect, and all we have to do is execute on it, and it'll work. But the way it goes back to the way I think about the multi-generational thing and thinking about, what would Sister Rock decide about this? So if you're being asked to do something that, okay, I can do this, but I don't think it's going to meet the needs of what the person requesting it is looking for. But I can do it because that's what they asked me to. And that's not good. So what it takes is getting in there and saying, okay, let's talk about what we're trying to accomplish with this technology. Let me make sure you understand the kind of the challenges around it, and maybe the things that it won't deliver that you think it might. Let's together get to the core of the problem or the opportunity you're trying to solve. So I really, as a leader, I hate victimhood. So it's very easy for someone to say, I'm just doing what they asked me to do. But if you know that it's not going to give the results that are expected, you're not doing your job as a leader to not bring that forward.
I love this where you're saying what I love what you're not saying, which is when people are demotivated, I'm pulling out a nice recording of Sister Rock or a nice story. No, that's plastering over. It's actually what I'm hearing you do is I'm actually engaging people and figuring out together, hey, where are we stuck? What's not working? In helping us move towards our purpose, and therefore what can we do differently, which is not going into victimhood, but it's saying this challenge is actually an opportunity for us to move more into our purpose as opposed to get estranged from it.
That's absolutely correct, and that's honestly that's a big part of leadership today is effective collaboration with people, and we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. I've got definitely areas where we can improve in that, but I think that's the modern leader, I think, has to have that mindset of, you can't be just a fulfiller of requests. You have to be a partner in moving the whole organization forward. And, even though, for instance, I might have a pet project or a pet technology, I think this is what we should do. But if it's just cool and not really moving the organization into where we need to go, I shouldn't be advocating for that. I'd be saying, okay, let's not spend money on this right now because it's not important. And so that's in terms of my leadership team, and I'm really blessed with a great group of people that work with me on my leadership team, and we've cultivated that attitude very well. It's still easy to get kind of your feelings hurt and offended when either you're asked to do something that you think is too difficult, or your opportunities you're bringing forward aren't adopted. That happens sometimes, but I think that the key thing is, okay, what's most important for our overall ministry to move forward, and sometimes we have to lay down our pet projects, and we have to take on hard things that are hard, and that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm. I love that you're talking about how we need to sometimes, keep that eye on the larger purpose, which also means reprioritizing what we do and not being driven by our smaller self-preferences, ego, pet projects sometimes. Shifting gears a little bit, Scott, you've been working in this organization for about 30 years or more, right? I'm curious about where you are right now in life, what your aspirations are for the next decade. What are your aspirations for the next decade? What would you like to see happen for yourself, for your colleagues, maybe even for the world? What would you like to see happen?
So in my particular scenario, I feel like in this organization and with the team I'm working with now, and with healthcare, that we are at a place where we have created opportunity for ourselves on a kind of stratified layer where we've accomplished things that now will allow us to do really truly amazing things. And so I think through the years we've got an organization, we've got some of the foundational tasks completed. We've got electronic medical record. We have very, very good, reliable technology. And I think what in the upcoming years, we all know that there's really exciting things, and there's really things that are perplexing as to how they're going to be utilized, like AI. And I think what I see in the next 10 years is, our role as leaders and technology leaders changing from fulfillers and, I'm the technology leader, so I'm going to bring you all the technology ideas. I don't think that's the world anymore. I think the whole world is infused with new ideas, and we're going to have physicians and business leaders that are going to be bringing ideas that are technology based and new ways to use AI or new ways to improve care. And so what I want to position our organization, my team particularly, our team is, be ready for that. Be ready for that change in role, and that we're not just a fulfiller. We're bringing technology expertise into the conversation, but technology is going to infuse many parts of care and many parts of the business, and we can't be the bottleneck or the filter for all that. We are the partner and the enabler. We make sure that the organization is doing the right things, but good ideas are going to come from multiple areas, and we have to be comfortable with ceding some of that ownership. Well, why is it this is my area? Why is somebody else coming up with ideas from my area? That's not going to work. I think in the next decade, that we're all going to have to be, more and more organizations become more digitally dexterous. They know about the technology more. They know what possibilities are, and we have to stay useful and relevant to the organization by being somewhat of a Sherpa to guide through the opportunities, but also being a really side-by-side partner. So I'm excited about the possibilities in healthcare that some of these new technologies are going to bring. I'm excited that in Mercy's situation, that we're really well positioned. We got many of the fundamentals taken care of, and so it kind of like terminology I use is we built the dance floor. Now we can dance on it. So I'm really excited about the next few years.
Go dance and be Sherpas and integrate and collaborate and cede the control that you don't need and cede the ownership you don't need, so you can collaborate to what actually matters. We're getting towards the last 10 minutes of our conversation. I'm thinking about people that may be listening that may not be having a good day today. Maybe this podcast is helping them a little bit to have a better day. I don't know, maybe good. But let's say a person just is not having such a great day. They're maybe very challenged and or not feeling the connection to their purpose, maybe because they don't know what it is, or maybe because of where their work and life is going, seems to go kind of in a different direction from where they think their purpose is, right? What would Sister Rock say to a person like that? And what would you say?
So I'll start with what I'd say. I mean, just again, all I can speak to is my experience and my learning, and everybody's different. But I'm sharing my story. But I think one of the things that, particularly in today's world, we're tempted to oversteer and overreact. So when you're having a hard period or having a challenge, I think it's a little too common for people to say, I got to get out of here. I got to do something else, or I got to give this up. And without really consulting your gut and your purpose. I've tried to get to myself a point where I'm not reacting. I'm not being driven by a problem that I'm trying to escape from, but thinking, okay, I've had periods where I've had a year plus where something's been bothering me and it's really feeling like it's kind of vexing me at work. But the bigger picture is that, hey, this is my house, so to speak. I'm going to be part of the team that moves this organization to the next generation, and I'm going to get through this, rather than just kind of cutting bait and moving on to the next. I'm not saying you have to swear your life to a single organization, but I think not oversteering and being thoughtful before you make big changes. And I think from Sister Rock's perspective, I think always her message around bringing it to the why are you here, who are you, and what do you bring into the organization that no one else can bring. We don't want you to be like everyone else. We want you to be who you are and bring innovation and bring passion and bring purpose to what you do. So I definitely think that how you think about your daily activities got to be thought about in a broader context. Otherwise, we live our life stomach churning, constantly bouncing back and forth. Rooted and unwavering and implies it's not easy to pull up something that's rooted. Not that you ever don't need a transplant to a different pot or maybe put into a broader field, but I think I've seen people that make changes too quick and react and just end up never really connecting to areas that could be purposeful for their lives. And so, so my advice to particularly younger people is, experiment about yourself, move around, but be thoughtful. Make sure you're consulting with, I consult with God. I try to get a peace about my decision making, and just make sure you have confidence in your gut before you react.
Don't oversteer. Don't overreact. I hear this word of obedience to the bigger thing, the longer purpose. Again, who are you? Why are you here?
Exactly.
Scott, how do you practically consult with God? How do you do it?
Practically, so in my faith is I spend time reading the scriptures and kind of meditating on those, and to me it's amazing how 2,000 plus year old document has relevance in the daily context of my life. And so I find encouragement in the Word of God. I find time in prayer and meditation where I'll just get a gentle kind of leading. I say a leading in my spirit. Some people say it's a gut feeling, but I feel like, okay, that's the core thing. I realize, okay, this is the important thing I should be asking myself, and then I act on that. Again, it's not perfect. I'm not super spiritual. I'm just saying that taking the time to figure out where's the leading in your gut. To me that means the leading of the Holy Spirit. But where's the leading of your gut, and what's the purpose of what you're trying to do, and stay out of the frenzy of flip-flopping and trying to fix things yourself when you haven't had that time to pray and meditate and consider what you should be doing.
The gentle leading of the Spirit, and making time for that. I've seen that throughout our conversation. There's so much here. I'm going to put a few takeaways here as we're getting to the end of this conversation. One is being always very clear about my why, taking time to spend time with it and spend attention on it, being able to open myself to listen for the guidance so I can hear that gentle steering as opposed to the oversteering and the overreaction. Framing my purpose as part of multi-generational purpose, and really thinking about how does my internal purpose circuitry get turned on.
That's right.
So many valuable lessons. By way of closing, Scott, what would you like to say to finalize our conversation today?
I guess I just sum up. I feel honored to be able to speak to this. I don't feel like I'm anything special in terms of having these revelations, but I do think that I've had the blessing of being exposed to purposeful existence in my career and in my family and in my community. And, I think just advocating, not that everybody's the same. And like I said, not that people shouldn't grow and change jobs and change cities and so forth. But that's always do it with your purpose and your inner why up front. And I think that's the biggest thing that's the biggest advice I give based on my own experiences. And, the benefit is you get to see the fruitfulness of what God puts in our life in terms of long obediences in the same direction. Those are, you go to places that you wouldn't have been able to go without going in the same direction for quite a while. So I think there's a big benefit of grounding yourself that way. I think it creates stability and vision for the people that we lead. And I think it creates a really meaningful and fulfilling career and life for ourselves. So that's my story, I guess.
Long obedience in the same direction, and how that gives us so much. So it's a different life orientation from being transactional. And transaction is not bad.
Right.
It's what many of us are taught. Many of us are in maybe for survival reasons. And even then, we still may have a choice whether we want to open more for purpose and ask ourselves, like, what is that really has my purpose circuitry, to use your word, Scott, turn on? Mm-hmm. And the other thing I want to add to that is the long obedience. What you say was
long obedience in the same direction is what I.
The long obedience in the same direction is not rigid. It could be felt like that. What I felt from this conversation, your long obedience was to really listening to your purpose and let that speak to you. And for you, it happened to have manifested in being a healthcare provider, a provider in mercy, right? In mercy. And for everybody, it shows up in different ways. I can't thank you enough, Scott. It was such a beautiful conversation. Has me sit up taller in my chair. And if you're listening, maybe reflect on in what ways may I still be living transactionally? Not bad. And what would happen if I allowed a little bit of purpose into that, whatever that looks like? It's not rigid. It's something that makes you come alive. You've been listening to episode 45 with Scott Richert of Rooted and Unwavering, where we help people connect more deeply to their innate potential. If you're interested in these podcasts, you can subscribe to us on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere else. You can also watch them in video form on LinkedIn, YouTube, and other places. I'm your host, Hylke Faber. It was a pleasure to be with you. See you next time at Rooted and Unwavering.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode of Rooted and Unwavering, leadership conversations about courageous connectedness, presented by the leadership development company, Growth Leaders Network. To learn more, subscribe to this podcast, connect with Growth Leaders Network, and Hylke Faber on LinkedIn, or read Hylke's award-winning book, Taming Your Crocodiles. Now take a moment and appreciate something that is great about you. Celebrate the gift that you are and enjoy connecting more deeply to your best self today. See you next time on Rooted and Unwavering.